Good morning, everyone. Once again, welcome back to the Canadian Junior Virtual Cycling Series. My name is Andrew Paradowski, and once again, I'll be joined by Josh Peacock. But in a moment, we just want to apologize to everyone for the small technical snafu that we had here. The race file, unfortunately, got removed about an hour before the race, so we had to scramble and get a new race file sent out to everyone. So if you are wondering why you're not able to connect, or it says there's no race, and you're watching this live stream, be sure to check the email that you used to sign up to the race in, and there you'll find a new link to the race. The new start time will be at 12:15 a.m. So if you're worried about making the start, don't. Just nice and calmly go and get the new link, download it, and come to the race. You have at least 15 minutes left before we begin the men's race here at the Canadian Junior Virtual Cycling Series live stream. So with that, let me bring in Josh Peacock from Cycling Canada, my co-host once again for today. How's it going, Josh?
Doing great. Thanks, Andrew. How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. A little bit stressful there with that technical glitch, but now that we've got things sorted, we'll be underway in just under a quarter hour. Luckily, it looks like things are okay for the women's race, so we're not going to see the same problem. That should begin at 1:30, but we're looking at a 12:15 start for the men's race on course at the moment.
And what would be a virtual event without some technical difficulties, right? And big thanks to the organizers for responding quickly on that one. And as Andrew mentioned, if you are watching and you can't seem to get into the event, check the email that you registered with, and there will be new instructions with the new link. You can hop on in. I can see here on the start line from our spectator mode, it looks like a lot are already there. So it appears the message got across, and as Andrew mentioned, still expecting green light for the women's race. So for the ladies there, you can continue to register with that link that was sent earlier.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the start line right now. On screen, we have our men's race lined up. So it does look like the message got out. I count at least 40 or 50 riders on the start line here. I think we have upwards of 60 riders competing today. It's certainly an increase from last week, whether that's because the word got out, more people are available today, or some people just don't like racing crits. It could be one or all of those things for sure. But we do have a lot of riders here. So since we have a lot of free time on our hands before the new 12:15 start, Josh, why don't we go and run through that start list, and let's talk about who we've got in the race today. Of course, this start list is as of last night, so if there's anybody who was added last minute, then they may not show up on the on-screen start list here. So that just lets you know that if you want to be on TV, be sure to register early. Josh, who do we have racing for us today?
Yeah, today we've got a pretty good group. We were represented by most of our provinces that were here last week, and it looks like we do have some new faces. So we'll start with out west, the Alberta crew. We've got one rider named Aaron Stagg, who's riding in the U17 category from Beachy Sport in Calgary. From British Columbia, it appears we have four of them, starting with junior rider Campbell Parrish from Above and Beyond Cancer, powered by Bike World. Jack Mace, who's a U17 rider, the sole U17 rider on that team from Mid-Island Velo Association. And finally, junior rider Mark Sato from Devo Cannondale to round off the BC team. Lining up for Manitoba is U17 rider Adam Smith. Also followed by him is U17 rider Loic Savard, junior rider Matthias Dick, and U17 rider Mika Dick. Those are all Team Manitoba riders. U17 rider Soren Westlake from Junkyard Dogs, as well as junior rider Ty Andres, who's an independent rider himself. Rounding off the Manitoba crew is U17 riders Tyler Hartle, Aiden Gauthier, and Ewan Dowling, all from Team Manitoba. We have one lone rider from Newfoundland and Labrador, so welcome to the race, Rowan Gates. I don't know if this is an official team, but Team Badass is what's listed here. That's a junior rider from Newfoundland.
I think for our young riders there, Josh, we'll have to refer to that today as the Bad Asterisk team.
I think so. From Team Ontario, our biggest squad here again today, a great representation from the Ontario group. We've got Brady Stewart, who's an independent rider riding as a U17. Carson Mattern put up a strong performance last week. That's a junior rider from the Ascent cycling team. Charles Bergeron, a U17 rider from NCCH. U17 rider Cole Dempster from KW Cycling Academy. Also U17 rider Colton Bartholomew from the Toronto Hustle. This is a new younger development team being formed by that group. So great to see some representation there. Daniel Snow, that's a junior independent rider, as well as David Olesniak, a Toronto Hustle rider as well. That's a junior rider from the Toronto Hustle crew. David Simpson from NCCH. We've got our reigning winner and should be in the leader's jersey here today, Dylan Bibick from the Ascent Cycling team. Followed by U17 riders Eric Ogrislow and Luca Buhlman, both independent riders in the U17 category. Lucas Rowerda from Team NCCH. Luke Valenti from Toronto Hustle yet again. Michael Leonardo from Racer Sportif Mattamy Home Cycling Club. Followed by U17 rider Nathan Martin is an independent rider of Ontario. We've got another solid crew here of Toronto Hustle, all in the junior category. We've got Owen Clark, Teo de Groot, Diron Inglis, and Gavin Hadfield. Again, all representing that Toronto Hustle crew, which had a great showing last week. To round off the Ontario squad, we've got Joshua Cooper, a U17 racer representing Attack Racing, as well as Orion Falk-Doughton, who's another rider from Attack Racing in the junior category. Rounding off Equipe du Québec, we've got another crew here. Starting off with Jérôme Gauthier from Club Cycliste Subway, followed by Xavier Barbès from Club Cycliste Subway. Also, we've got U17 rider Adamo Guillamera, and my apologies everyone for the awful name pronunciations here, from Espoir Laval. That's a U17 rider. We've also got Justin Roy from Club Cycliste Boucherville, which had a strong showing last week. That name was on the front of the group quite a bit, as well as Michael Guilbault from Espoir de Laval. Junior rider Nicolas Dulten. Oh, I'm losing names here. Sorry, I'll skip on down. Zachary Neiber from the Club Cycliste Subway, another sort of strong represented group here today. Back to it, Thomas Fortin from Espoir de Laval, as well as Vincent Gagnon, his teammate from Espoir Laval, both U17 riders. Felix Amel from Velo 2000. Onto the team Sask. We got a good showing here from that group. Junior rider Fergus English, as well as U17 rider Luca Vieman. Rounding off Team Sask itself is Oscar Stack Michasu, also in the U17 category. Riding as independents from the Sask group is Aiden Doig, as well as Oleksil Kolosov in the junior categories. And finally, we've got some international presence here again this week from the Star Track cycling group out of the United States. We've got Jaden Lee, as well as Louis Kopachuk, both U17 riders. We saw some fun racing from them last week and wish them all the best this week as well. And that rounds off our crew. Looking at the start line, it appears they're all here. And actually, yeah, if I see that correctly, there is a USA Cycling jersey in the start grid, which is really neat to see too. So best of luck to everybody, and I'll pass it back to you, Andrew.
Thanks for that, Josh. Yeah, certainly a lot of riders competing today, so this will certainly make things a bit more interesting for the race. We're looking at a gravel race with a little bit of elevation in it, so of course the tactics and the riding style will be completely different than last week, where we had crit, a lot of get out of the saddle and sprint type of stuff. Now we're looking at long sort of pulls and endurance riding, and watts per kilogram will certainly come into play here as riders are battling the physics of the video game on their trainers. So with this larger group, hopefully people will be able to take advantage of it as much as possible. But of course, gravity comes into play, and then everyone may end up being on their own. So we've got 2 laps of this course, 35.3 kilometers. So we're looking at just a little over 17 kilometers per lap. And I think the overall climbing is around 400 meters. I'd have to take a quick look at the guide again. I don't know if that is the total elevation gain or that's the per lap elevation gain. It's 450 meters there. So it's certainly going to be a climber's race, that's for sure, in this particular one. Looking at our start clock. Looking at our start clock, we have just under 8 minutes left to go for the new revised start time. So for those of you who are sitting at home wondering why you can't log into your old race file, that's because the race unfortunately had a bit of a technical glitch and we had to reissue the race code. So if you're still trying to get in at home onto the race, be sure to check the email that you used to register to log in to the new race link that was sent out about 20 minutes before the noon hour Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. So check that out. For those who are also participating in the women's race this afternoon, we're not expecting anything to change. It was just the men's race where there was a glitch, so that race should still go on at 1:30 Eastern, 10:30 Pacific. So we still have a few more minutes here before we get down to the final countdown, Josh, just so we don't take up too much of the racing viewing during the race. Why don't we also take this chance to talk about some of the sponsors and partners of this race?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got obviously some great partners involved with this series, starting with Four Eyes. They've been gracious enough to put up a power meter not for the winners, but everybody who's been entered into this series has also been entered to win a power meter. So any single entry that we see in here is a power meter. And if there are technical issues, or tech-canicals as we called them last week, which we did see a few, and we're hoping we don't see too many of those this week. For any one of those, there will be an extra entry. So sort of our bad and good luck type of issue. So I'm hoping we don't see a lot of that this week, but you never know, it's possible. On the sponsor side, so we've also got Cliff. So Cliff Bar has graciously donated for the winner of each series on the men's and women's side. We are going to see a Cliff prize pack at the end of everything. So that's the end of this phase, which will be at the end of, I guess next week is our last one. So there will be a nice prize pack for everyone there. And then as well, all of our partners from the Provincial Cycling Association side. So to start it off with the sort of the hometown crew here, we've got the Saskatchewan Cycling Association Performance Group. So that one they've been the group that have spearheaded this whole group or this whole event. So big thanks and big shout out to the Sask Cycling Performance Group. Next up, we have the Ontario Cycling Association. So the Ontario Cycling Association is the provincial governing body for the sport in Ontario, and have graciously supported this series and put together quite the team for it. So big welcome to Ontario Cycling Association. Next up, we've got the Manitoba Cycling Association, or the MCA, as you might hear us refer to them. The Manitoba Cycling Association is the not-for-profit volunteer-based provincial sport organization responsible for the promotion and development of cycling in Manitoba since 1980. To find out more, head out to mbcycling.ca. Alberta Bicycle Association. The Alberta Bicycle Association is the affiliated provincial sport organization of Cycling Canada for the province of Alberta. The mission of the ABA is to advocate, develop, and facilitate bicycling for Albertans. Look up for albertabicycle.ab.ca for more information. As well, we've got Bello New Brunswick. Bello NB is the home of cycling in New Brunswick. It offers cycle coaching, touring, racing, and events for all of their members. To learn more about this Atlantic cycling destination, hit up bello.nb.ca. Last but not least is my employer, Cycling Canada. Cycling Canada is the Canadian governing body for the sport of cycling. Both supporting the community and cycling initiatives. Cycling Canada aims to inspire Canadians to cycle. At over 137 years old, believe it or not, Cycling Canada is the oldest national sport organization in the country. Head over to cyclingcanada.ca for more info. I'll pass it back to you, Andrew.
Thanks for that, Josh. So we have a lot of groups here helping make this possible, from our corporate sponsors down to our PSO, NSO, and TSOs helping out. There still is some room on that board for you to come and participate. So if you happen to race for an NSO that might want to partner with this event, please feel free to get on the phone and ask them to call the fine folks at SAS Cycling to put them on the list and be a part of this great event coming up. Looking like we've got about 3 minutes left before the new revised start time for the men's race, 12:15 Eastern and 9:15 a.m. Pacific. So while we count those final few minutes down, Josh, why don't you give us a quick recap of what happened last week while we check in with the start line to see how things are going there?
Yeah, last week we had a really exciting race. The group was quite compact for most of it, with some solid attacks around pretty much the entire event. Towards the end, we started to see some pressure, and Dylan Bibick came away with the win. That is last year's series winner, so it was no surprise there that he'd be a contender. But the Quebec, Manitoba, and SAS groups all gave him a great run for their money. So we're expecting this time for things to be rounded out a little bit more. Probably a little bit more strung out given the distance and the elevation, but I think an exciting race to come nonetheless.
Yeah, it sure was exciting. Of course, it was a little bit difficult for myself to follow. I made a few gaps when I was calling the race. It was a little tough to tell exactly where the finish line was because of the graphics. And normally in UCI level races, they don't allow overhead banners in the final kilometer of a race. And there was this 500-meter sort of intermediate sprint thing with barriers and everything. And I thought the end of that was the final. And of course, then the race goes and I call the sprint and the screen still says there's still a few hundred meters left. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's not the finish then. So, of course, this week I'll be certainly paying attention for that, looking around right now, noticing the graphics and seeing that there's a nice big white line on the ground with some purple sides that will let me know that that is indeed the finish. So if I miscalled your finish last week, I apologize, and hopefully we'll be able to correct that and call the correct winner coming up in today's race. Just a little over a minute. I expect everybody who is on their trainer and at the race right now to be revving up and warming up, getting ready for this race. As it is with all virtual races, there's almost always a big jump at the start, so you'll have to get that wattage up for sure, and you don't want to start cold. So if you haven't started spinning those legs now, better start doing that. 1 minute. This is your 1 minute warning for the start of the race. And while we are waiting for that to start, we'll just check in online and see who is joining us. We have now 46 people watching. That's friends, family, and as it was last week, likely some grandparents joining in. And that's the beauty of doing this countrywide virtual racing, that anyone can join in and watch. So if you're watching with us at home, feel free to give shout outs in the chat and we will make sure to give the shout out online for those riders. Less than 30 seconds to go and we'll get this race underway. 20 seconds, gentlemen, start your engines. The excitement is building. Those trainers are starting to ramp up. The fans are going. Less than 10 seconds to go now. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they're off. Here we go.
And here we go. It's going to be an exciting sort of start. Right, for this one, it's going to be power off the bat, as we always see with virtual racing. And really, like I say, once they hit that elevation, we're going to expect a little bit of stringing out, as they say, especially with the number of riders here. The pressure is definitely going to be on. I don't know that we're going to quite see the power consistency that we saw in the crit racing, but it should be exciting nonetheless.
And I've got a pretty good view of the main pack yet. Looks like a lot of Ontario jerseys in the mix, but of course we know that because there was 4 pages of start list for you to go through in the original start list reading. So this certainly will be a lot easier for Ontario to control the early stages of this race with their numbers, but that advantage may end up thinning out as the race moves on and the elevation starts to come into play. So we'll see how that breaks out. Small little attack happening off the front right now. 5 riders looking to maybe extricate themselves from the main group, but it looks like there's going to be a couple of challenges to that break. 2 Ontario riders up front. Let's see if I can zoom in there and check out what's happening up front there. Looks like it is Carson Matern. Once again, Carson Matern leading the charge like he did last week at the crit race. Always putting his nose into the wind and taking some of that draft for his teammates. But if we do a quick look behind and see how much of a gap, he is putting a significant gap on the group behind him. So this is a solo breakaway for Carson Matern, and looks like he's not getting a lot of challenge from Ontario, which is of course to be understood. But you can see certainly that there are some riders working really hard to chase back on Carson out of the saddle right now, hoping to keep this break going for a little while. Let's see if we can move back to a rider back here. So looks like it is not Ontario in the front. We've got Quebec. There's the race leader, Dylan Bibick, with the race leader jersey on there. He's in front. They're controlling the pace now, looking like they want to allow Carson to get away. If we take the drone footage there, you can see he's still got a bit of an advantage. Ontario kind of in the mix there, but they're making the other riders do the work. Looks like we've got Newfoundland in the front there. We got the one rider from our team, Bad Asterisk, out of the saddle trying to chase down Carson Matern in the early stages here while we're still on the pavé, the asphalt section of this gravel race. But if you take a look at the top right of the screen, folks, you'll see we've got a little bit of data happening. right now, this is the data for Owen Clark. He's traveling at 40 kilometers per hour the first couple of minutes of this race. We've only got 2 kilometers in as they reel Carson Matern in from his little flyer there, kilometer and a half into the race. And things are starting to split up. You can see these little white balloons in the middle of the data screen there showing you where all the riders are. So it's not a complete large group. There are some riders who are coming off the back. But don't forget, folks, that this is a mixed category race. We're looking at both juniors and under 17 riders. So it's a span of 4 years. Each category has 2 years. The under 17s are 15 and 16. And the juniors are 17 and 18 of their birthday in the calendar year. So there could be somebody who turns 18 later this year. They're 17, they're still a junior, and so on and so forth. So those 4 years do provide quite a large range of fitness, and people grow up at different rates and stuff like that. So when you mix a race like this, quite often you'll see different abilities, and it won't necessarily be that sort of contiguous group like you might see in a single category element.
Yeah, Andrew, sorry, it seemed I was losing you a little bit of your sound there. I'm not sure if that's a me thing or a you thing, but yeah, seeing some exciting racing here for sure. I think power's high, pressure's high. People don't want things to get away. So we can go back to, and for those watching, you're going to see a lot of different colors here at the start. So I think probably best to remind everyone sort of what colors represent what teams here. So you'll see at the front quite a bit, and it doesn't surprise me based on the numbers that we have at today's event. You've got the Ontario crew. That's sort of your red with your white stripes vertically there. That's the GCN jersey represented by the Ontario crew. The Quebec group here, you'll see sort of a darker blue jersey. That's the Training Peaks kit. If we get in any closer, you'll see that. So that's the crew from Quebec, always riding at the front, always riding super strong. The Albertans in a similar blue, but a bit lighter color. You can kind of see that at the screen. That's the Decathlon kit represented by Alberta. Team Sask is the Primal kit. That's sort of represented by a bit of green on the top and mostly black. So that's your Sask riders. We also have the Manitoba crew. You can see those at the foot of your screen right now. That's the Ruatog kit with a little bit of green and yellow and white. And finally, you've kind of got your rainbow colored almost kit. That's the BC crew, represented in the RGT Founders jersey. Different from last week, you're going to see a series leader jersey for both the U17 and the junior riders. So as you know, they're scored a little differently. So what we'll see today is a pink jersey. That'll be represented by our junior series leader. And then you're going to see sort of a light blue jersey with some stripes in it at the front. That one is our U17 junior series leader. U17 series leader, not junior, I should say. So that's to help you distinguish a little bit. Again, we're running sort of some questions in the live stream in the chat. So if you have any questions about how everything looks, or if you're a little bit confused about who's what, definitely feel free to ask us some questions in the comments. We'll do our best to keep this as interactive as possible. But that's sort of a breakdown of the jerseys there, Andrew.
That's great, Josh. Thanks for that. And it's certainly useful for everyone to know where everybody is using these jerseys as a function for the provincial teams, so that it's easier to tell whether riders are on your team or not. And I know that every rider has their own team as well, their home team, but I think in this national race series, riders are pitching in for their province as well. So we are going to see some teamwork for that. While we were going over those jerseys, we just saw the race turn on to our gravel section of the race. So this is the dirty part of the Dirty Reaver. Excellent race that's mimicked from a race in the UK. And gravel racing for sure is on the rise, and we're going to see a lot of that this year in real life racing. Because the pandemic is still raging and we still haven't come out of the clouds yet. So for any in real life racing, gravel racing will certainly be one that will be at the forefront, because unlike what you're seeing here today on the screen, a lot of gravel races end up splitting up very, very quickly. And it's more of an individual race, and they may have to do some modifications to allow it here in Ontario or BC, or every province has their own regulations around what kind of events that we can do. But certainly gravel racing will be big on the calendar this year for sure. If you take a look at the screen, you can see that the riding style has changed a little bit from the avatars, so they are responding to the gravel, and I can imagine that it is changing. So if you look at the top right corner of your screen again, you'll see that the The slope has changed a little bit, so we are climbing, so the riders are going a bit slower. We're at an 8% grade right now, but we're also on the gravel, so the rolling resistance is changing. So I don't think once it gets flatter, we're going to see those quite as high sort of speeds that we saw earlier on the asphalt, if the physics in here are indeed affecting the rolling resistance of the riders here. Taking a look behind, we've got about 5 riders in front of us. It is spreading out like crazy right now. It's a big, long line, so riders aren't getting that benefit from the draft anymore, and we are traveling at a slower speed. So here you see, again, we're now at the 0, maybe just a little bit of a downslope, and they're only doing 36, 37 kilometers an hour, whereas on the paved section, they would be well above 40 on this one. So certainly the physics are coming into play here. And that will certainly be a game changer in the race today. Take a look behind again and see how this race is spreading out. It looks like they have split into 2 groups here. There's a lead group and a following group. Let me see if I can go take a look at who we've got here in the back. We're just going to go and move back. We have to go through quite a few racers to go back, and so you can see this gap here, and there are riders. We've got Hamel and Durand-Morin from Quebec trying to bridge up from that group. They don't want to let that get away. That's a smart move from our Quebec team here. And we've got our Gates riding along with another rider. Let me turn on our rider list so we can see who we're looking at here. On the left, it only shows us our top riders, and then we can see who's around us as well. So that looks like it's a moto. That's why it's not being named. So unfortunately, Mr. Getzer is on his own. Jay Gauthier still trying to bridge up to that group. It looks like the group is slowing down a bit, and a few Ontario riders here got shelled off the back from the main group, but I think it has effectively come back together. So let's go back up here to this front group, and they've slowed down a bit. We're down to about 30k an hour. That's allowed that group to reconnect and the group to get big. If that group still had the power and they were able to push through, they might have actually done something pretty serious there, because that gap grew pretty big pretty fast.
Yeah, it's going to be a real strategy game here. I mean, it always is a strategy game when it comes to virtual cycling, but, riders are going to know now, if they haven't had a chance to pre-ride this course, or maybe they have, they know kind of where those hills are. They know when the surges in power are going to be. And as we've seen in virtual racing, those hills really seem to be a point where you start to see some really good attacks, see who's got the power to stay on, see who can actually keep up. So we're going to see a lot of that, but it's also good to remember we're doing 2 laps of this. So you can kind of see where these little attacks are happening now and expect them again on lap 2. And riders are going to be recognizing that too. They're going to be prepping for, okay, next lap, I got dropped a little bit on that hill, so I'm going to make sure I'm riding at the front. So there's always strategy at play. As we mentioned as well, this is, with virtual cycling, a really unique aspect is we can have coaches in the ears of cyclists via voice apps like Discord. So you can imagine, and you'll start to see sort of teams start to organize themselves at the front as a group. And that's, that the coach has some say in this, and there's definitely some influence from the coach, from, the other riders who are part of their team saying, okay, I'm going to go now, like, let me get away, or let's get after these guys. They've really jumped at it. So awesome to see the strategy, whole new ball game when it comes to virtual cycling and virtual race radios and communication between riders and coaches. It really keeps things interesting for us here, and we can only guess what they're saying, but you can sort of see it when those attacks start to happen and those sort of group dynamics start to take place.
Absolutely. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, we are showing the overall profile of the course. So this looks like it's 1 lap of the race course. And in about a kilometer or so, we're going to get to what is probably one of the hardest climbs coming up here. Maybe not quite as long as the second climb that we had a few kilometers ago, but it is certainly going to be a punchy one. And we may see some of that big splitting coming up within the next case. So keep your eyes on the screen. This race may change fairly quickly in the next few moments. Looking online, we have quite a few people here now. We have 67 viewers. That is probably a channel record now for us, so that's great. Welcome everybody to the 2021 Canadian Junior Virtual Cycling Series. This is stage 2 for the men's race. We are at the virtual Dirty REIVER course. So if you're here and you're joining us today, then be sure to check out the chat option here in YouTube and send a message to your riders. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, the Junior Race Series channel, to make sure that you get notified every time that we're going to be going live. And if you have a moment and you want to help support this live stream, head on over to buymeacoffee.com/ARC events. That's ARC events, and just donate a few bucks to help keep the live stream going. You can check out the beginning or the end of the video for the direct link. So look, going back to the race, it looks like we are just about to hit that climb, and there's a switchback. Oh, a gravel switchback. That does not sound like something I would want to be riding, but look at some of these brave riders battling this curve, and there's a couple of riders that are having some trouble there staying on. We're going to move up the screen there a little bit, and give me 1 second while I manage to... There we go.
Yeah, we can definitely, we all know how hard switchback climbs and mentally daunting that can be on the pavement, on a regular road course, let alone on this gravel. You know, you never know what's going to play into the heads of riders and how game physics play in. And if, being on gravel actually might slow you down a little bit. So we're going to start to see some riders dropped, I would imagine, on a climb like this. Riders know they just have to get through this climb and they're almost at the top, and then it kind of gets a little bit descendy through to the end of the lap. But with that mentality, we'll certainly see some attacks as well.
For sure, and it looks like we have a phenomenal breakaway happening right now. It looks like somebody that is not on my start list, but it's Monsieur Gouvernement from Équipe du Québec. He looks like he has almost 100-meter advantage on the main pack right now. An excellent climber, making a solid advantage of that weight to power ratio. He was putting almost 6 watts per kilogram climbing up that. Let's take a look behind to see what kind of a gap he still has. It is a significant gap there. Let's see if we can head on back to the next rider and looks at the forward picture here. And yeah, that looks pretty significant. It's always tough to see a rider getting away, and it's hard to sort of reel them in. Sometimes too, if the course is really windy and curvy, if you let that rider get away, then they get out of sight, out of mind. Looks like Carson Matern is on the hunt right now. A chase effort is happening from Team Ontario. Carson Matern there with Hadfield and Smith sort of controlling the front of the chase group. Maybe he's looking to have Matern bridge and work with Gouvernement and put together a solid breakaway. That would certainly be exciting. That's always fun to see good teamwork on racing, but even in virtual racing where it's a bit tougher, you don't get that souplessance, that feel for the road and what's happening around you, and you don't get to react in the same way that you do. So to be able to do this kind of stuff virtually is certainly a testament to the skill and caliber of the riders here today.
Yeah, and certainly I think we're going to start to see some real team tactics here. You can see it in your screen now. You've got the different groups at the front sort of organizing themselves, getting ready, deciding, like, do we respond to this attack right away? Do we let him hang out there by himself? You got to remember too that on his own, that rider at the front isn't benefiting from the pack dynamics, isn't sort of able to sit into the slipstream of the group and take away that headwind. So they're working hard as it is, and extra hard dealing with all that being out there in front solo. Now, if he can actually keep that power going and keep that advantage, it could work out for him as we come into sort of the descent here back towards the lap sign. Yep. But that right now he's certainly put himself into the pain cave, and he's got a lot of work to do to stay ahead. The group is certainly what appears to be organizing themselves. Ontario at the front, Quebec not far behind them, and of course our series leaders there just sort of waiting. So it'll be interesting to see if this one can stay away, and it looks like he won't be staying away on this lap.
Yeah, it appeared to be that Matern managed to bridge up with Gouvernement, but it didn't look like he was interested in chasing back on. Matern put about 10 meters on him, and then the pace just slowed right down, and our pack sped right up. So it looked like this was just one of our initial break attempts, the ones that you always see that are just there to sort of mix it up a little bit, but not actually hold any weight. We might see something like this be more successful later in the race. Matern is still driving really hard, though, looking to hold on to this advantage. It's a bit tougher to do good breakaways in the downhill, but sometimes if you're a solo rider, having to descend by yourself can certainly be easier than descending with a pack. Now, this works a lot better in the real world. I'm not entirely sure how the physics of this would work in the game, if they've accounted for that sort of thing, because quite often when you're descending as a pack, you're maybe a little bit more careful on the brake, on the brakes, excuse me, and when you're by yourself, you can take all the right lines and certainly put some distance on there. Right now, it's got about 50 meters on the group, but again, if you look at that list on the left there, Clark, Hadfield, they're moving around a little bit too quick, so it's hard to follow. But certainly some Ontario riders there, maybe holding the pace back a little bit. He's now up to 65 meters. Let's see if we can take a look back at the riders behind Carson. So it's even a bit of a split there. So you can see we have a bit of a smaller group. There's some riders falling off the back. We've got Niebrzdowski and Bergeron and Leonard, or as you said earlier, Leonardo. That's my new name from Michael. We'll have to let him make fun of us for that, sure, at the end. We got Luc Valenti there, Charles Bergeron. A lot of strong riders. Looks like Bibic is up there as well. You can see that jersey, and there you see him pointing the front of the peloton there, putting his face into the wind and moving back in as he doesn't want to waste too much energy sitting in. Smart riding there by Bibic. Let's see if we can look forward here and see what's happening up front. Beauty of the RGT app is it allows us to view this from a bunch of different angles. It's like having a complete fleet of motos and helicopter cameras showing you the action here at the Canadian Junior Virtual Cycling Series. So it looks like they are playing with Matern a little bit, a little cat and mouse. They got him on the hook and they're reeling him in, but they're not doing it terribly quickly. But of course, that's smart. You don't want to waste too many of your matches in the beginning. While they're pulling him in, let's take a look at the chat. And looks like we've had a bit of action here. So we have Keith Niebrzdowski saying, "Go Team Subway." Also, he was looking for us to see the names. Yeah, we didn't put them up in the beginning because we wanted the race to develop a little bit before we started showing the leaderboard. So we got that up for you there. Michael says, go, go, go at Ruhan or Ruffin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's certainly saying go. We've got TX500 Cafe saying, let's go, Lewis. And then Wal Choo Choo retracted their message, unfortunately, so we don't know what they said. A couple questions about the leaderboard, so we got that up, so that's great. Coverage is getting better, which is awesome. So thanks for that compliment. We really appreciate that. It's tough to do this when you've only got two people hosting, and you have to do all the technical stuff and do the production on the show. So it's tough to certainly get the thing put together. But we're trying to get that together for you, so you have a chance to watch your friends and family and sons and daughters race in this series. Taking a look down the list, while Choo Choo says 67. I don't know if that's a reference to someone here. Question from Siong La Present. Are the 17-18 ranked separately from the younger riders? So in this overall race, you'll see a complete single leaderboard, but in the junior race series, it will be separate for the U17s and for the juniors. So yeah, they do get separate scoring. Somebody also helped on the chat there while Choo Choo said that they were also being scored separately. We have Martin Roy and Richard Roy saying, go Justin, go CCB Boucherville, go Justin, ça va bien. Justin is certainly doing very well. That is the case. While Choo Choo's asking about a Masters category, well, there's always room for more racing in Canada, but of course, racing takes the sweat, blood, and tears of volunteers. See, it's even in the word. So if you're interested in putting together a Masters race, the best way to do that is to step up and try and organize one. Contact your local PSO, like the ones that we talked about earlier, part of our sponsors and partners in our race, and say, hey, I'd like to do this and be a part of the overall race series, and I'm sure someone will be able to help set you up. Coach Kevin Sims from Ontario, let's go Hustle Squad. Toronto Hustle, new, as Josh was saying earlier, a new junior development team, and they are certainly doing really, really well. And lastly here, Keith again says, really fun to see the race with the comments. So let's get back to it. Josh, while I've been reading this list, can you tell me what's been happening in the race?
Yeah, no, not really, because I don't have the same spectator capabilities that you have today. I mean, what a day of technical difficulties. Let's just say that.
We started off started off with a technical difficulty of having the race get deleted from the board, and we had to send out a new link for everyone to get joined in. So hopefully everyone made it back in. We apologize to anybody who didn't because of that technical snafu, but we were able to fix it in time, hopefully. And then even us setting this up right now, I had to reset a couple of times and get things going on RGT. So it wasn't the easiest morning for sure. Josh, sorry that you don't have that. Maybe if you want to get the YouTube feed going on your end too, so you'll be a bit delayed. I think we're about 30 seconds back, and I'm sure most of our viewers at home have noticed that it's if you're watching alongside with one of your young racers that we're calling the race about a half minute back. But so it looks like I'll be doing most of the live commentary here because I only have the screen. But it looks like it's been settling in for most little while. We've been on this sort of steady, sort of false flat descent for the past few kilometers. We're just coming up to 13 kilometers now in the race with 22.3 kilometers left. Maybe about 4K before we get back onto the asphalt road and the start-finish line, which I will, of course, pay attention to and make sure I call the sprint correctly the next time around. Not a lot of activity in the front here. Team Ontario once again sort of driving / controlling the pace on this gravel section, the final gravel section before we get back onto the road. And it looks like we've got Brzezdowski looking at a little jump there, tried to get out front, but then he pulled it back quickly. Another rider here, Carson Matern. We're going to call him the Rabbit now. Carson Rabbit Matern, always in the front there, looking to maybe get away or at least drive the pace. That might be part of their tactics. Josh, what can you tell me about how the teams are organizing their tactics today?
Well, I can't tell you much, but what I can say, it's like I mentioned before, we can expect that some of those teams, whether it be provincial teams or the club teams, you look at a team like Toronto Hustle, very versed on things like virtual racing. They have quite the activity going on Swift, and obviously are doing quite well on the RGT platform too. So you can imagine teams like that. You keep Quebec, the Sask performance team for sure. You know that they've got some organization. Like I say, in race, we're probably seeing some Discord style, race radio type of communication from the coaches saying, okay, this guy's gone out the front. Don't worry, we're going to ride as a group. We're going to bring him back. So just like a regular road race, like we might see at the highest level when you watch the Tour de France and you see a race radio in a rider's ear. The cool thing about this level of racing is we can bring that back and we can bring it to every single level of cycling. Whereas normally, in a junior or U17 race, a race radio might not be something that you would ever really expect. You can expect it here. And as I say, you can see it. You can see it in the groups. You see it in those light colored jerseys sort of grouping together. You can imagine there's some organization going on for sure. Every attack that happens is getting discussed, is getting sort of a counter attack is being planned, or maybe not. Maybe there's some organization on the same side. So we know that team tactics are certainly at play. A really cool element of virtual cycling, something that is new to the table with this type of stuff. And it's all great practice as well for the in-person stuff. Whenever we do end up back racing outside again, it really sort of cements together a team and it gets that tactic together. You identify the strength in different riders and they know how to sort of rely on each other as a team. So really great practice for the in-person events that hopefully we'll start to see maybe at some point this year, if not next.
For sure. Thanks for that, Josh. It's certainly, come a long way from, I'm going to date myself here, but from the early days of the PC computers and the home video game consoles. Now, Mario jumping around from pipe to mushroom and stuff like that. Now we've got virtual racing here with avatars that are, just a few notches away from looking super realistic, and you're able to ride your bike at home and race against others from around the world. I mean, today we're just doing races within Canada, and of course we have our American friends joining us as well. And by the way, if you're watching this channel, we're not saying no to more riders, so if you know any other of young Americans who want to participate in this race, be sure to send the link to the Junior Race Series website and check out, see if they might be interested. There is one more race coming up. That's next Sunday, same start time, so that's 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific for the men, and 1:30 and 10:30 for the women. So, be sure to join the final race in our 3-race series here. A little bit of a punchy climb here before we get to the Bell Lap. Riders are spreading out a bit, but everyone is working pretty hard to stay together. So we'll just sort of follow this along before we get to the end. One thing I want to do before we get to the Bell Lap as well is to see if we can take a look back and see how everyone else is doing. Of course, it's never fun if you're sort of missing the break or not with the main pack anymore. But of course, this is for series points, and you still got to work hard and make sure that you finish the race and finish in as high of a placing as you could possible, so that you can get points for yourself, for your team. Once again, Carson the Rabbit Matern is off the front with a 20 meter advantage. Coming into the final stretches here before we get back onto the asphalt and the final stretch before we get the Bell Lap. Nice graphics here on the course. We're on the bridge section. It's a little interesting to see a gravel road with a bridge. Normally they tend to pave these sort of things, but of course, that's the beauty of the virtual world, is that you can do anything. RGT isn't the only platform out there. It's the one that we've chosen to use for the Canadian Junior Virtual Series for many reasons. But on other platforms, I've seen crazy things where they've stitched together different parts of real world and fake world sections. Like, for example, in Zwift, there's a course where there's you ride downtown London, and then you ride down into the tube system on plywood boards, and then you're in the tube tunnels, and then you come up under the Thames River, but you're not on the south side of London. You're now automatically at Box Hill. So that's one of the for sure the pros of doing online racing, is that you can basically create any kind of world you want, whether it be hyper realistic or you do something that is a little more fanciful, shall we say. So just coming up to the 16.5 kilometer mark. Pace is pretty high, but we do have a bit of a downward slope. We're looking at about 43 kilometers per hour for the pack right now. So we are nearing the finish line, but of course it is a 2-lap race. So we're looking at another about 30 minutes in this race. Not going to be a lot of time in between the men's race and the women's race. So if you're looking at watching both, be sure to, right when we finish broadcasting, to get that channel up and going. And we're hoping to start on time at 1:30 Eastern, 10 Pacific. Josh, you have any predictions?
Certainly, Andrew.
Yep, go on.
We've got quite the race lined up for next week to finish off this phase of this series. We're headed to Cap de Formentor, which is actually a well-known route in Mallorca, Spain. So as Andrew mentions, we do maintain the ability in virtual cycling to play with our worlds and add some unique features, take away things like traffic, go down into the tube station. Even as Andrew mentions on Zwift, if you've ever ridden in New York, you're riding up on that sort of fake magic road above the city, and then you can pop right back down into Central Park and it feels real again. So we are headed to Mallorca next week, and again, a very well-known route with quite a bit of elevation. So that one's going to be quite interesting. Then looking at the course profile here, lots of up and down. Where you see a profile on today's course, it's very much a big, long, sustained climb with some good punchy ones in the middle, and then you kind of roll down more or less a loss in elevation down into the lap signal. Next week's going to be a little different than that for sure. Will just be one lap of a super hilly course at Cap de Formentor. So again, the series has definitely been designed to cater to everyone's different strengths and abilities. So if you're not a super strong crit rider, maybe you're better on the hills, then something like today, or certainly something next week, might be built for you and you have a better chance. So it's really neat to sort of play to everyone's abilities and keep it sort of in anyone's game sort of race series. So we may see the shifting. Maybe those leader jerseys get shifted from week to week. We don't know. But the way the riders are riding today, there's a good chance they stay on the backs of those riders. But that's what a race series is all about, keeping the anticipation high and keeping people watching. So as I can see here on our live stream, we do have some folks watching, and hopefully some family members are tuning back in, and hopefully those who weren't quite sure of virtual racing, didn't really know what it was about. Hopefully we're kind of helping educate things a little bit, and now you're a seasoned vet on race number 2, and on race number 3 you'll be ready to organize one yourself. So we'll look forward to those emails coming in.
For sure. Just on screen right now, we saw the riders come through the start-finish line to get the bell for the final lap to go. So it looks like the overall climbing will be roughly 450 meters for the whole race. So that is for both laps, so about 225 meters of climbing in each lap. It looks like we are now down. If we take a look behind, there's only a few other riders, so it looks like there are only 12 riders in this lead group right now. So we have 52 riders online. We started with a few more than 52. Some people might have had some technical difficulties. Josh, what was the term that we coined for this?
I think we called them tech-canicals.
Tech-canicals. And what happens if you happen to have a tech-canical, whether it's before the race or during the race?
Yeah, tech-canical. If you're like me and you experienced one of those and you can't actually see anything on the screen, then I feel for you. Unlike me, you will be entered in an extra name into the draw to win one of our sponsor 4i's non-drive side factory installed power meters. So although you've already received that entry by entering into the race, you'll get a bonus entry as sort of a consolation for having your technology drop out on you, whether that was on your end with the internet, whether it was on our end with the app. These things do happen. That's an element of virtual cycling. So, and as I can attest to very personally, it does happen from time to time. This is the internet, this is technology, this is a wired world we're in. So rest assured that if that has happened to you, and it doesn't appear that that's happened to anyone today, so knock on wood, it stays the same for the women's race. But if it does, you got an extra shot at winning that power meter. So it's kind of our thank you, our apologies for any connection issues you might have had, and you're still in it, at least for that anyways.
For sure. Well, let's take a look to see who is still in this race today. If I can get back here. So on screen, folks at home, what you're looking at is my avatar. We have to be in the race so that we can be able to show you all the footage here. I, however, am not riding. This is a fake avatar just for us to be in there. I am sitting here at the console controlling this live stream. So let's move on up and see if we can meet up with some other riders here. And so we got Jay Mace. Let's see if I can get my start list as well. Let's see. Jack Mace, that's from the Mid-Island Velo Association from British Columbia. A fun fact for those of you from Ontario, the Mid-Island Velo Association was created by Peter McCaffrey, who also created the Midweek Cycling Club in Ontario. So there's your BC Ontario connection. So Jack, keep going. I know it's tough to ride alone, but you are certainly doing well, and keep pushing forward for those points. In front, we have Monsieur Dachet from Team Quebec. Looks like not on our main list, but keep on going there. And looks like Cole Dempster also riding by himself, unfortunately. Come on, Cole, keep those legs spinning, move faster, and finish that race. And then we have one of the riders from this is a rider from Manitoba. It's one of Matthias or Micah Dick. If we look on the left, we might. No, we only get the first letter. That's the. I guess that is the problem from having brothers with the same first letters, that we're not going to know which one it is. But it looks like he is riding with an O'Grislow. That's Eric O'Grislow from Ontario. So a little bit nicer to have somebody to ride with. If the two of you can use the physics here, work together, maybe you can bridge up to that lead group there. Moving forward. Oh no, it looks like Michael Leonard has a tech-canical. He is on the side of the road. Hopefully that is something technical, Michael, and not something that is more serious. Unfortunately, looks like Michael's out of the race. I noticed we missed him. We saw him mixing it up in the beginning, and then he wasn't there, so clearly he must have been one of the riders. Oh, looks like I've cheered him on to keep going. He's now moving, so good for you, Michael. Keep moving forward. Jay Cooper riding, doing really well there. We got O-Stack. O-Stack. I don't have an alphabetical list here, so it'll be hard for me to get those first names, but keep riding there. Keep riding on hard. And then A. Doig riding really well, trying to keep close that gap there. Looks like we've got El Savard just a little bit ahead of A. Doig. Maybe if the two of you can pair up there, you'll be able to work together and go forward. And we've got El Kopchak. These are the white jerseys with the USA logo, so this looks like one of our Star Trek riders, one of our American riders, so doing well here. And don't forget, folks, that this is also a junior race and a U17 race, so it's not uncommon to see this kind of stuff happening, and the results are going to be separate, so they will give a chance to get some points here. T. Andres, they're riding alone, but riding hard. Keep going there. T. Hardle also. Looks like a couple of teammates. They are maybe only a few 100 meters. Maybe they can get together and climb up. D. Snow and looks like, yeah, D. Snow riding by themselves, unfortunately. Not a lot of riders are working together. Hopefully, if you catch up to somebody and you can ride together. We've got F. English and V. Gagnon riding together. Hopefully, they can take some advantage there. So keep going, gentlemen. You guys are doing well. And we got almost a small group here. So we got Gagnon, English, E. Dowling, and a couple of small riders. Not quite at the front yet. We're in the sort of the mid-30s here. So this is a nice group. Let's take a look forward here if we can see what looks like. Yeah, okay, great. Nice little group here riding. And there's that Team USA jersey. Must be the other Star Trek rider riding here. So nice to have our American friends up riding with us. Be sure to invite some of your other friends, see if they want to come and join us next week at the final race in the series. Nice little group here riding together. Dowling, Sato, English, Gagnon. Keep going, gentlemen, as we work our way to the front. J. Lee from the USA. That's our American rider. L. Veman in this group. A. Stagg. I remember that name. That's the top. That's our BC Sport rider from Alberta. And looks like we got another little small group formed here. A couple of Ontario riders. We got Theo de Groot and Martin. We got Jay Gauthier and one of our Quebec riders. That's Barbez, Xavier Barbet from Club Cycliste Subway. Allez, allez. So a nice little group working well together here, trying to bridge up to that lead group. Keep moving forward here. Luca Bullman, unfortunately, Team Ontario riding by himself. Let's see, look at the list there. Only about 100 meters behind the group in front of him and 100 meters ahead. So maybe there'll be a catch up or he'll catch up to that group and be able to ride with them. So we've got A. Smith and R. Getz riding together with a couple other riders right in front of him there. So it's a nice little group of four here. We've got Jamarella and Dick and I make out all the names. The names keep moving on the left. It's so hard to follow sometimes. Deran Maron is with this group as well. So keep going, gentlemen. You guys are doing well, working together. Keep that rotation going. We've got a small group of Ontario riders here, Aleniachak and Valenti. They are doing a nice little two-rider pace line, and they are sitting 15th and 16th overall. So we've just gone through 50th to about 15th as we get closer to our lead group. So these two looks like to be the first group off the back. No, we got a moto here. This is one of our motos. So that is not a rider. Yeah, so that we had those last two Ontario riders. They are the first group off the back of the lead group, who we are now back with again. So let's take a look at the overhead footage of this lead group. Looks like it hasn't changed very much. Don't see any difference. Carson the Rabbit Matern is still with the group, so there is no breakaway at the moment. But if we take a look at our course profile, pull that up on screen right now, the full elevation map is showing that we're in that big climb right now. You can see on the top right of your screen, 7.5 degree slope. For those of you who do ride bikes, you know that this is a painful climb, and it's only made worse by the fact that it's on virtual gravel, slowing you down a bit. They are sub 20 kilometers an hour, and they are working super hard. You look at some of that wattage on the left side of the screen, 6 watts per kilogram. So for those of you at home who are joining in and you're new to cycling and especially new to virtual cycling, what that means is that is the input that the riders are giving to the virtual game through their trainer. So they're on a mechanical cycling trainer at home. It could be a dumb trainer or a smart trainer, and we'll get into that in a second. Or they could have power meters on their bikes. Essentially, what they're doing is they're telling a piece of a technology that the amount of power they're putting into their pedal stroke is being recorded and then transmitted to the game. So let's say they're putting in 500 watts and they weigh 50 kilograms. Well, then they're going to be doing 10 watts per kilogram. Now, I know that's absurdly high for sure, but it's just an easy math number for me to do. But that's what it means. So you basically take their watts per kilogram, multiply their weight, and that's how many watts they're putting out. Or take the watts they're putting out, divide it by their weight, and that's their watts per kilogram. So this allows the video game to basically tell the avatar where to be on the screen. And it also allows the physics to work really well too here. Let's take a look behind the race and just make sure that nothing... Looks like we might have dropped a few of our riders because we're down to about 10 or 12 in this group. But of course, climbing will do that. Maybe those riders will get to catch on. C. Bartolo trying a little bit of an attack there with, of course, Carson the Rabbit, not letting him get away from that. That's my job there, sir. he says as he counters that attack. But just going back to the wattage per kilogram factor, so in-game physics will allow that to actually come into play as well. So every rider is actually required to input their height and weight into the system, and it takes that into account. So when you're climbing, the heavier you are, the more that takes into effect in terms of the gravity physics. And the taller you are, the less of a draft that you'll get. So it's pretty neat what they're able to do with this to make it as realistic as possible. And if you even watch the avatars on the screen and how they move around, I mean, it still looks a little virtual, but it does have that kind of almost realisticness that you're looking for, and especially when you see some cornering. We saw this more pronounced last week during the crit. Cornering was more realistic. If you watch some of the other platforms, it might not be as realistic. You see a rider take a corner and they take it right through the middle of the road, and racers wouldn't do that, especially if they were alone. They would cut on the inside, and you see that happening more here in the RGT platform, so it's a little bit more realistic, maybe more designed for the racer. And you can see that in that in order to actually take part in this, you need to have a power meter or a smart trainer. So that you're getting accurate data. Platforms like Zwift, which maybe are more for the general public and riders and group riders, they allow you to use other technology like speed and cadence sensors, which may not be as accurate, and it allows them to participate. But here it's a bit more about racing. So they are requiring you to have a power meter or a smart trainer. Small little attack happening here off the front, about 15 meters. See Bartolo, see Parrish looking to put a little distance between them and the lead group. However, that's countered pretty quickly. Charles Bergeron leading the way there, putting out 6 watts per kilogram, and maybe even looking like it's going to translate into something. A little bit of a gap there. S. Westlake there falling off the back. See if you can put a little bit more power into that to get back on that group. You don't want to be dropped. I think in this race, if you miss a surge in this one, that you're not going to be able to get back on unless you burn quite a few matches. So it certainly is important when you see that surge to respond, to react very quickly. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think riders are getting tired now. It's been pretty consistent effort. There's been a few different attacks off the front, but they're knowing to stay that consistent sort of power throughout. And as sort of mentioned on that first lap, Andrew, we are coming back up on a pretty gnarly switchback climb here. So they're going to start to sort of group themselves together mentally. They're preparing for that little bit of extra effort, that last real tough climb before we head into the latter parts of this lap. So it's anyone's game. And as mentioned, fatigue is playing a factor now. This is a little different scenario than we saw last week, where it was sort of sit in, get that consistent power, try to get yourself protected as much as you can in the draft. Here, we're just seeing left, right, and center strong attacks, and that's doing a number on these riders' legs.
That's for sure. Only so many matches can be burned. You can only sort of surge and recover so many times, and then that lactic acid starts building up, and then it becomes like just trying to pedal concrete blocks around your bike. So, of course, every rider has a different amount of matches, and everyone uses them judiciously. So you'll see that especially in the race that we saw last week, for example, where some riders were maybe going for sprints a little bit early, and then some are waiting for that to, sort of go at the last second. And I think we saw that in the women's race where there was a rider holding back, and I can't remember which of the 2 riders it was, and I called it wrong, of course, because I didn't have the exact finish line done. But the rider that eventually won, and I think it was Dylan Baker, sort of held back and then burnt that final match right at the end and managed to pass her competitor for the gold there in this race. So we're now in that big punchy climb, as you can see it starting to spread out. If I move to an overhead view here, we can see that it's turned into this sort of pace line of destruction. There's probably now about 50 meters between Bartholomew, who we're looking at right now, in 11th position, and there's only 12 riders in this group. So 50 meters separating them, and it's probably, it's Gouvernement, Monsieur Gouvernement from l'Équipe du Québec, showing his prowess at climbing the hills. But there are still, like you said, a lot of strong riders in here, and these races are short. Junior men, if you look at some of the other races that they participate in sort of the real world, the big one in Canada being the Tour de l'Abitibi. They're doing stages of 60, 80, 100 kilometers and then some. So a short 35-kilometer race may not be enough to really tire these sort of big riders out. Now, virtual racing is a bit different. Certainly riding on the trainer taxes the body in different ways. So a shorter race, maybe 35 kilometers, might be equivalent to a 40 or a 50-kilometer race on the road. But certainly this is a bit of a shorter race. So the climbing is necessary to break them up a little bit. So we'll see if this lap results in the same kind of total split that we saw in the first one come back together. It looks like it's not coming back as quickly as I thought it might. We're still in a bit of an incline, about 3%. We're not into that flat, and now that the group isn't together anymore, maybe the descending will be a lot easier. There is a significant gap opening up right now. We've got sort of our lead group of 4 riders off the front with maybe 60, 70 meters on Bartholomew right now, with 2 riders in between, about 25 or 3 riders in between. So it is still sort of gapping. Colton jumping out of his saddle right now, trying to get back on. And again, maybe he's listening to that advice we're giving, that if you let this group get away, then you might have to say goodbye to it as it moves forward. Let's scroll up here, see if we can go up and take a look at some of the other riders. We've got F. Hamel there in 11th position right now, working hard to get onto that group of Carson the Rabbit Matern and I'm Polish and I'm having trouble with this last name, so I apologize. Niebrzydowski and Carson Matern, they're 9th and 10th right now, working really hard to get back up to that group. And we've got G. Roy from l'Équipe de Québec. He's working really hard to get onto that lead group of, looks like we've got 6 or 7 riders up front there. And of course, we've got series points leader Dylan Bibick leading the way right now with Monsieur Gouvremont, and then Mr. Clark, Parrish, Hadfield, and more. That's our lead group of 7 right now. As we look at the bottom of the screen, they are finished climbing almost, and it will be a big descent here. So these riders who got hived off from the main pack are going to have to work really hard if they want to catch this group. May end up being just a final sprint of sub 10 for sure, but it might even be less than that as we move forward.
Certainly, and I'm reading through the comment section here. Thanks, guys. They're continuing to come through. We've got Song WA present saying, thanks for acknowledging the American riders. You just did a great job organizing this event. So, I mean, again, big hats off to the Sask Cycling HP Performance crew, particularly Russ and Caleb. Those guys both listening in, I know. And thanks, Russ, for dealing with all of our technical issues this morning. I know your commentators have been a bit of a handful, so we do appreciate the support. And not to mention all the blood, sweat, and tears that kind of go into organizing these things. You can imagine it's not just a quick flip of a switch. They've done a great job on their social media accounts, on creating these live streams, on sourcing some sponsors and getting the word out to provinces and coaches across the board. So in a huge warm welcome to our American participants. Certainly spread the word down there. We'd love to see more, that's for sure. And it's a reminder to anyone watching, if you've got some athletes out that would like to be a part of it or aren't too certain, it's the beauty of virtual cycling is this is a free to enter race. Absolutely try it out. It's a good chance to test your fitness, see where you're at in the winter, bring some friends. The more the merrier for something like this. We love seeing people come out and participate. So we're also seeing some Vas-y Loic from Rock Saint-Sarrazin. So from the Quebec side, seeing some great cheering on from the crew there. So welcome our friends from Quebec, as well as Sébastien Gagnon saying, go Vince, go. So we've got a good sort of cheering squad here from the Quebec crew. Absolutely. And Chris Riemann, absolutely. Good job, Russ, down in SCA. You guys have done a great job. So big shout out to the Sask Performance Cycling crew. I'm sure this is not the last phase you will see of this series. So again, the more the merrier.
On screen right now, we're looking at our lead group of, now it looks like 8, possibly hard to count as moving up, 8 or 9 riders in this lead group. So a few riders have caught back on. We've got the nice little view from the moto here, and the riders are riding tight. If this was a real descent, I'm certainly sure we would see a big yard sale of bikes on the ground. It's interesting how the physics of the ride, you can see the riders almost shoulder checking, and then their shoulders are sort of morphing into each other. So of course this isn't hyper realistic, but it does do the job, and it gets it pretty close for sure. So we've got 8 riders here, 8 or 9 riders in the front in the drops, and they're in a nice tuck formation right now. A lot of them are trying to take advantage of the descent. We're coming just out of it right now. We're coming out of the 28-kilometer mark, just less than 7 kilometers to go, and they've already climbed over 380 meters in this race. So if we take a quick look behind to see if there are any other riders, no, it looks like unfortunately this group has put some big distance on the remaining riders that were with this group earlier. So it looks like it's going to come down to roughly an 8-rider sprint here. Unfortunately, we can't see any of the other riders on the list on the left there. And it looks like J. Roy in the back is number 8, so that confirms it. 8 riders in our lead group here on the Dirty REIVER race here on the RGT platform at the Canadian Junior Virtual Cycling Series. So with just about 6.5 kilometers to go, it looks like it's an 8-rider race. And it looks like, here we go, right off the back, 3 riders are going to be joining the fray here. Who do we got? That could be a moto. Unfortunately, those were just motos traveling at very, very high speed. And it looks like Monsieur Gouvernement is having some trouble. He has fallen off the pack there. I don't know if he's having a technical or not. Unfortunately, Monsieur Gouvernement is no longer with our group. So it looks like we are now down to, it's still maybe 8 riders. I think maybe one of those riders in that group was certainly not a moto, but we didn't see the name pop up as they came by. And they were going pretty fast, so I'm pretty sure most of those were motos, but maybe not. We now have 10 riders in our group. Okay, so now we have a race, ladies and gentlemen. 10 riders off the front, 53 minutes in, 29 and change with 6 kilometers to go. Let's take a look at the overhead view here of this race. It's pretty exciting as we are descending down a 12% grade on gravel at 40 kilometers an hour. That would certainly make me nervous on there with rocks and pebbles skipping around and hitting riders. But these are some.
And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at this group of riders, and we have a pretty good representation across a few provinces. We're seeing that red and white. That's your Team Ontario. You've got the pink jersey and the turquoise jersey. Those are our 2 series leaders. We've got a couple of those sort of rainbow, the purple and blue and green colored jerseys. That's Équipe de Québec. That one is BC. And then we're also seeing sort of the blue Training Peaks kit there with the black sort of square across the back. That is Équipe de Québec. So we've got good representation. We've got some teamwork happening from those teams. Obviously, I mean, given the number of riders here, Ontario certainly has the most riders up front, but it looks like we've got some cooperation, some strategy at play like we discussed earlier. So this is going to make for a really exciting finish.
Yeah, absolutely. We commented about the size of Team Ontario at the beginning of this race with at least 15 to 20 riders starting out. But of course, some of those were U17s and juniors. And it's now been whittled down to roughly not even a handful here, including our race leader, Dylan Bibick, who is in that, I guess, what do you want to call that, fuchsia jersey there with the stripes on the back, just in the back of the group. Let's see if we look behind there. Take a look and you can see him. You can see just in the back there, right behind everyone, you've got our race leader, Dylan Bibick, just sort of biding his time, waiting in the back, letting the other riders in Ontario do some work. But Quebec is certainly working really hard, and they are that sort of that teal with the square in the back. Josh, who's the team again there with the blue and the pink stripe on the right?
Yeah, the blue and the pink stripe, that's Team BC with so your multicolored, that's the RGT Founders jersey, they call it. So Team BC has a couple of riders represented. Like you say, we'll call it the fuchsia jersey of Dylan Bibick. With his win in the series last year, his win in the race last week, riders, he's kind of like when you've got the world champion or the national champion in the pack. He's a targeted rider. Riders know that he's sort of hanging out there ready to attack and make some moves. So they're going to expect potentially some desperation moves at the end of this race where you see some attacks in the last final kilometers to get away from him. But he's going to be responding.
And correct me if I'm wrong too, I think Jay Roy from Équipe de Québec is wearing the U17 series leader jersey. That is that
would be correct. Yeah. And that's a good point to bring up too here, Andrew, is as you mentioned before, we do have a sort of a combination of U17 and junior riders. So rest assured at the end, you might see very few U17 riders in this group at the front, but they are being scored separately. They have their own separate ranking. So there's kind of a race within a race here at all times. And really exciting, though, to see that we do have some U17 riders up front, mixing it up with some of the nation's top junior riders. So very exciting for the future of our sport, for sure.
Yeah, that certainly is really good to see. Looking at our infometrics here, we are now looking at 4 kilometers to go with just slightly under 400 meters climbed overall. So we are now in the final stages of the race, and we've got our group of 10 here. Now, if they had controls of their avatars, what you would see now at home is riders sort of looking around going, okay, what's going to happen here? Who's going to do what? And we've got teams trying to control the action at the front. Like you said earlier, many of these teams are connecting with each other on other virtual platforms like Discord or another way that they can all talk to each other. So they're certainly able to communicate with other teams talking to each other or hearing what they're saying. So we're going to see some team tactics here possibly. Maybe we're going to see a couple of solo breaks. We'll see who thinks they've got it to go now. Like you said, there's some big hitters here, and nobody wants to make a move too early and then fade out too quickly. So it's certainly going to be a lot of action happening here. 3.5 kilometers to go, and we're going to be seeing that big bridge, and we're also going to be seeing the asphalt pavement coming up soon. Not a lot of road surface left once we get onto the asphalt, so we're in our final meters once we get there. And oddly enough, and again, something that you would never see in a real life race, the finish is a hard, almost 90-degree turn to the right, about 10 meters to go. So that's certainly something to watch as we're getting close to the end of the race here. Once again, a lot of sort of looking around here. The pace has dropped now. We're about 30 kilometers an hour, even with, we've got a bit of a sort of up ascent and then a down ascent, but the riders are sort of slowing down. They're basically looking around, waiting to find out who is going to go and who's going to make the move here. We're coming up on a rider on the screen on the left there. This is unfortunately someone maybe who had a technical. Hopefully you can get that fixed and maybe finish your race today. Then we've got from Team Quebec, this looks like Niebrzdowski looking really strong right now, putting out some wattage, leading out the group. Take a look behind and see what's happening. Still all together here with 3 kilometers to go in the race. So if this was a stage race, then everybody would be safe from mechanicals and crashes. They would get the time of the group. But that's not how this is working. These are all standalone, and this is an Omnium format, so everyone must finish the race, and they get placed in order of their finish. Niebrzdowski is pointing into the wind right now, taking a lot of that draft for everyone. And we've got Bibic on the left here coming up the side, and we've got Geroy close on Bibic's wheel right now, looking to keep an eye on there. 2 classifications, but of course it would be big palmiers for Monsieur Roy to finish the race in first place. Looking around 2.7.
And certainly.
Yep.
We'll welcome with the final kilometers if we're interested to hear your predictions. So feel free to type them on into the comments there. This is going to be a fun interactive thing. But as suspected, the group isn't really letting anybody get away. We may see some acts of desperation. I'm just in the back of my head, I'm hearing the theme from Jaws music there as we get closer and closer. And you've got guys like Dylan and Roy in the back. In that fuchsia jersey, in that teal jersey, they're there, and they're not going to let anybody get away with too much of a lead, and they're both, strong contenders to take this W here today.
And we're on the final climb here of the race, and you can see those wattages jumping up like crazy. We saw some 7s and 8s in the watts per kilogram. So everyone's working really, really hard. No one wants to get dropped on that final little punch of a climb. Looks like we've got Geroy coming around the front. You'll notice that it's interesting that they come flying up through the group, but then they get stopped right at the front. That's likely not them stopping. That's likely the game's physics taking over, saying you're in the wind now, so you don't get to go as fast. So lots of surging happening on screen right now. 2.2 kilometers left in the race. We're still on the gravel. Here comes that big bridge, with 2K to go when we get onto that bridge. So the riders are starting to get a little jumpy. Everyone's checking their matchbook, seeing what they got left in the tank for this final sprint with 2 kilometers to go now. This is where we're going to start to see some of these attacks. And look to the left and you'll see those numbers jumping up from those white 2s, 3s, and 4s up to the reds, 5, 6, and 7 watts per kilogram. Carson, the rabbit Matern in the front again, but now is not the time to be doing fake breakaways. If you're going to go, you're going to go. And it's going to be anybody's game still. Still 10 riders And it looks like Charles Bergeron coming in on the outside, on the left, coming around, leading it out now.
And Andrew, it's going to be interesting. We won't mix up the finish arch this time with just one big one at the end of the race. So get ready for that call. Andrew, I'm going to leave that one to you because I technically can't see anything. So real excited to hear about this finish through your call.
Right on. Matern, Hadfield, Clark, all in the front now, driving the pace pretty hard. Coming up to the Flamme Rouge in about 300 meters. I don't know if they actually have one on this course or not. But that means that there's 1 kilometer to go when you see the red pennant hanging over the final kilometer marker. We've got Roy, Bibic, Matern, Niebrzdowski, Hadfield, Parrish up front right now. Everyone's changing positions and trading who's going to be in the win and who isn't. A little bit of a jump there by Clark. 1K to go. The Flamme Rouge has been activated. We're not quite on the asphalt yet, so people are still trying to figure out what they want to do and how they want to do this. M. Moore now from Team BC in the front. Nice little attack by Moore. Parrish, Matern respond. Bibic now coming around. Bibic in second position right now. Parrish out of the saddle doing a little bit of a jump. 750 meters to go. You only have a couple of 100 meters once you're on the asphalt. And it looks like Parrish, Matern. Oh, Parrish, huge jump. He's got 15 meters on the group now. Is that going to be enough? 600 meters to go. And there we go. As expected, Dylan Bibic is out of the saddle, putting out 12 watts per kilogram, chasing down Parrish. Let's make sure that we can follow this race going in the whole way. Moving on up, there's Owen Clark. Bibic coming up and catching up to Parrish. There he is. Bibic, Parrish, 400 meters to go. Who's it going to be? A big battle now between BC and Ontario. Quick look behind to make sure that nobody's coming up around us. No, it looks like they have the advantage. Bibic, Parrish, 200 meters. They're on the asphalt. Who's it going to be? Parrish has a slight advantage right now. Bibic is just on his wheel, taking a little bit of a draft. 150 meters to go. Twisty and turny, 100 meters. And there goes Bibic on the charge. 17 watts per kilogram. Insane, ladies and gentlemen. Here you have it. Mr. Dylan Bibic coming across the line, hands up, I'm sure, on his bike right now at home. A close second by BC's Parrish, and Ontario's Bergeron and Matern in third, fourth. And Monsieur Roy, our U17 leader, in fifth place. But that's, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is good enough for the lead in the U17. Hadfield, Clark, and Niebrzdowski rounding out our top 8. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. There's our race for today. And it was certainly an exciting one, a lot different than what we saw last week at our crit series, where it was really together until the end, where there was a big final sprint. This race really sort of separated our climbers and our endurance riders out fairly early on and reduced the race from a start of 50 down to a group of 10. And then it basically came down to who was ready to do their final sprint at the right time. And of course, whoever had the power then, whoever had the matches left, would take home the gold. And of course, that was Dylan Bibic, as he tends to have a lot of matches left in for a race this short. So congratulations to everyone who raced: Mr. Bibic, Parrish, Bergeron, Matern, Roy, everybody else who raced today. You guys did a great job. Josh, do you have any final comments about the race today?
No, what an exciting finish. I mean, I couldn't see it. I'm looking at it now as it comes through on the delay, and what a gutsy race by Parrish from Team BC. That was a real exciting one to watch right to the end. As we can see from things like this, virtual racing can be just as exciting to watch as in real life, in-person racing. And thanks, Andrew, for providing that exciting commentary. We got it right this time. We found where the finish line was. So this is a step up for the guys in the commentary, quote unquote, booth, aka our living rooms as well. So thanks to everyone who came out. Really big shout out to the people who joined in on the chat and provided some very great comments and asked some questions. Glad to see everybody watching. Thanks to our friends down in the States and across the country as well. We're excited to come back next week. Should be a really exciting race to finish off this phase. And thanks again to the crew at Saskatchewan Cycling for putting this all together. What a great day of racing. And here's to what the future has in hold for this series.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Josh. And while we'd love to spend a few more minutes talking about our partners and sponsors, we are now about 10 minutes away from the start of the women's race, so we're going to have to cut this live stream short. And just once again, on behalf of myself and Josh, saying thank you for coming out today and watching and participating in this race. And hopefully, we'll see you all in about 10 minutes at the women's race and to join us there. And if you can't make it, then be sure to like and subscribe to the Junior Race Series channel to make sure that you get updated for next week's race, which is on a Sunday as well, starting at 10 Eastern, 9 Pacific, and for the women's race, again, 1:30 and 10:30 respectively. So thanks again for coming out. My name's Andrew Paradowski, and on behalf of myself, Josh, ARC Events, and the guys and everyone at Saskatchewan Cycling, thank you very much, and we'll see you all very soon.